I'm just curious, Michael. We've covered actually quite a bit when it comes to charities, but is there anything else that you would like to add that people really should consider?
No, I think that's a good chunk of it. I mean, that's what I basically look at, and we've given you a lot of information, and but I mean, I would just, we need to be more aware of how we're doing, because we're seeing a lot of nonprofits, getting into some trouble.
Well, because when times are tough, that's one of the first areas to be cut, unfortunately.
No, exactly, but we're also seeing them grossly mismanage their money, and we're seeing, and we're seeing a lot of, if there's a lot of staff turnover, that's a big issue. How much they're paying their employees, that's a big issue. And so, the only way we can combat that is making sure that we're involved, and we need to be involved, because, like I said, we want to make sure our money is going to those charities that we really want it to. So,
see, being a philanthropist and volunteers do make a really big difference.
No, exactly, and I would encourage people, like, even if you can't donate, though, volunteer. I mean, because that helps reduce the cost of the staff that they need to bring in.
Actually, I think Disneyland has a program this year that if you volunteer for I don't know how many hours, and you get a free day at Disneyland.
No, exactly. Yeah. And, I think a lot of schools, I'm just signed on to be a new trustee for a boarding school in Arizona.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and I'm very excited about it, because one of the things that they have is a major community service program. They go to Mexico. These kids that are in high school, they go to Mexico. Or you see them in other parts of the country doing volunteer work or working with Habitat for Humanity. And so I'm glad to see schools are finally stepping up to the plate with them.
Actually, that's really cool. Because actually that's one of the things that we really haven't covered is how your life can be enriched. I mean, it's not just psychological, you feel better, right? Because you assisted. But it really can make a big difference in people's lives just by being involved or through some of the experiences.
No, absolutely. I've traveled the world doing this stuff, and you see me digging trenches in Ecuador, for example, or building hospitals in Guatemala. And see, that's the key for me when it comes to giving money or to even advocating for a charity, is it's those connections with the people you're helping. You're down there working alongside with them, and then you realize what an impact you make. When I'm down on Skid Row, for example, I'll sit down and have a meal with the homeless people because I want to hear their stories. And that becomes ingrained into who you are, and you're always going to remember that, and you're more likely to give and continue to volunteer. So I would encourage people even if you give money, to make sure you volunteer too if you have that time.
Right, and it doesn't have to be just an individual effort. We've been talking about a family effort to really be involved. I know after one of the earthquakes, I had volunteered with the American Red Cross, and one of the things I was fascinated by was that I remember hearing people that were in there saying, my spouse has covered the last 2 disasters, and it was my turn to cover a disaster, and they really look forward to helping.
No, exactly. And, that's kind of how I got into it. My parents were very big about volunteer work and about being involved. And, I think if you do it as a family, you bond together as a family. And you're setting a great example. Do you want to watch Paris Hilton and her court appearance, or do you want to go and help build a house for Habitat for Humanity with your family? What would be the most bonding experience, for example? So I encourage people to get off the couch with their families and go volunteer. Places like, and it's amazing. I had a fan recently write out to me. He's like, my girlfriend and I are about to celebrate our anniversary. What's your suggestion? And so my suggestion was, pick a charity and go visit it. That you guys both share a passion for.
And that could actually be a vacation, too.
It could be a vacation as well, because you can travel to Africa and dig wells, those sort of things. And they did. They went to a nursing home or a convalescent home that worked with Alzheimer's patients, and they sat and read to an Alzheimer's patient. And I don't think people realize how much that made the other person's day. And then those two bonded more so because they celebrated their anniversary by enriching the life of another person. And so, in fact, one of my dates recently with this guy that I'm seeing, we went and helped out a Habitat for Humanity home. Yeah. And then we were in Arkansas, where I have a second home, and we passed out water during there's a heat wave. And we passed out water for about 4 hours to the homeless. That builds our relationship, and then we have that foundation. So I encourage people to do that, and so, and to be innovative with it. So
now I'm just curious, because you've had a lot of experience with charities and new experiences. What was the one thing that really sticks in your mind that's made a difference in your life as far as working with a charity? And why did that incident make such a difference?
I really have to say that And it kind of ties in with a couple things I do, is the amount of children living on our streets. When I'm down on Skid Row in Los Angeles, for example, there are 12,000 children living on the streets of Los Angeles.
12,000?
12,000.
Oh
Across the
gosh.
country, there's 1.5 million children living on our streets. Now, there's a couple
But
of...
it's just like 12,000 here.
12,000 here. They live underneath bridges. And a lot of them are on the street on their own. Some of them have been kicked out because they're gay, or because their parents.
Those are just children. That's not people in general.
Right, but seeing a child living on the street makes you wonder what else you don't see, for example, and that memory haunts me like there's no tomorrow. And and it's interesting. We keep track of our criminals. We keep track of our prisoners. We know where they are every instant of the day. But we don't do that for our children. We don't know how many of them have been abused, how many of them are hungry, how many of them are living on the streets. And so we have some screwed up priorities. And so I think that, when I was out with the Los Angeles Youth Network for an event with Ozzy Osbourne last year. Ozzy and Slash and Billy Idol did this huge concert. But when you realize, and this is how that concert came about, was because Slash's wife, I believe, had seen, she had went and visited, underneath some of these bridges and seen the children, and it just rips her heart out. So I'm constantly haunted by that, and so I think that's probably one of those experiences. So, and like I said, it ties in with my equality issues, because parents are kicking their children out because they're gay.
It's like I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, and it's heart-wrenching.
It's like...
Because no child should be hungry, and no child should be... they're not surrounded by warmth. They're living on the streets. And so, can you imagine what that does for their psyche, for their self-esteem? And, if people don't go in to rescue them, if we don't have nonprofits like Safety Harbor Kids or Los Angeles Youth Network, these kids are going to be lost forever. And, children are so important in our society because they are a renewable resource. They're the ones that are going to make this world a better place than when we've left it. And if we don't give them the tools, then what good is that? So
I could see how that changed your life. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking of all these things going through my head, even as I'm hearing you talk about it. And part of it is you're thinking, how can there be that many kids, and you're almost, can I say, oblivious to that being in your own city?
No, exactly. Because we're sitting in our cars, we work, we go home. And I just don't think people give much thought to it, and we need to get those numbers out there. Because, we're looking at things, our news are always flooded by things like with Lindsay Lohan, for example, or it's flooded...
Or car chases.
Car chases. Once again, we're not focused on those things that we need to be focused on. So, like I said, 12,000 children on the streets of LA alone every single night.
Well, charity starts at home.
Charity starts at home, exactly. So, absolutely.
Michael, thank you very much. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to ask you questions about this. Shiva,
I also have several fan pages.
They can check you out on Facebook, right?
Yeah, my Facebook fan page is facebook.com/Michael Dean fan page. Or my yearbook, which has my largest fan group. And they can actually ask me questions I answer right away, or I try to. And that's myyearbook.com/Michael Dean Shelton. So, or you can reach me on Twitter as well.
Well, and actually, you're really good about that. I mean, it's like, I don't know how you find the time to do all of that. Because, seriously, you are involved in so many of the charity organizations down here. It's just, the world needs more people like you.
Oh, thank you. And like I said, we can all do it. I sometimes feel a little awkward that I get, so much attention for what I do. But I think it's good because a lot of people are following what I'm doing. And so if you can lead by example, then be it. But,
and so part of it is whether you can change your entire life, or whether you can just do a little bit. Every bit counts.
No, exactly. And one of the things that I live by is that I've been given so much. For those of us who've been blessed with so much, we have so much more to give. And so, and I think that that's an important thing to remember. So.
Well, Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you. You guys are great.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you.
Thanks.